Welcome to the Integumenary section of this course. Let's talk about the integumentary system. The integumentary system is your skin. Your skin has two layers, the epidermis and the dermis. Underneath that is the subcutaneous fat. The epidermis is the outer protective layer of your skin. The dermis is the second layer. The dermis has a secretion of glands, blood vessels, hair follicles, and receptors. The dermis makes up the bulk of the skin and is a tough, leathery layer composed mostly of fibrous connective tissue. The dermis is vascularized. Below your skin is the subcutaneous tissue. Subcutaneous tissue is a fatty cushion. It is located below the dermis. This is a good note to put in your book. There are 3 types of skin cancer: basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Basal cell carcinoma is the least malignant and most common. Squamous cell carcinoma is the second most common, and melanoma is the most dangerous. A lot of the codes are coded based on depth, how deep the surgeon goes during a procedure. It's important that you know how deep each structure is and the order of it. The epidermis, like I said before, is the outermost layer. The dermis is the second layer. The subcutaneous fat is the third layer. Then you have your muscle layer, and then after that is your bone, the deepest layer. A common thing that happens to your skin is burns. Let's talk about the different degrees of burns. A first-degree burn is an epidermal damage only. That means it's the top layer of your skin that is damaged. It causes localized redness, edema, swelling, and pain. A second-degree burn is the epidermal and upper part of the dermal, which is the second layer. Blisters will appear in this degree. The third-degree burns are entire thickness, or called full-thickness burns. It is gray, white, cherry red, or black. This is a good illustration showing the degrees of burns. As you can see in this illustration, the first-degree burn is just affecting the top layer. The second degree goes a little deeper, and the third degree goes all the way down. Now let's get into coding. Turn to the Incision and Drainage section of your book. You can find this by going to the beginning of the Integumentary section and looking at the table of contents. Look for Incision and Drainage and go to that page. It should start with 10060. Incision and drainage procedures are commonly called I&Ds. They are done for abscesses, carbuncles, hydronitis, cutaneous or subcutaneous abscess, a cyst, a furnicle, or a paranesia. Go through this section and highlight the main term in the codes. Also, highlight if it was simple or complicated. The note must specify if it was simple or complicated. Now let's turn to the debridement section. Debridements are coded based on the depth, so how deep the wound was debrided, and then it's also coded by the size of the wound. The size is based on square centimeters. If the square centimeters are not given, a length and a width would be given, and you would have to times those together to get the square centimeters. That will be good to write in your book here. Watch out for different debridement types. For example, there's a debridement for an open fracture, 11010 and 11012. Bracket these and put fracture next to it so that you easily notice it. These codes are coded based off of 20 square centimeters. The code description says, or part thereof. So if there were 25 square centimeters, you would code the first code and then the add-on code for the next 20 square centimeters. This is the debridement section. As you can see, I have bracketed the open fracture debridements, the subcutaneous tissue debridements, the muscle and fascia debridements, and the down to bone debridements. Let's look at the subcutaneous a little closer. As you can see, the subcutaneous debridement says debridement subcutaneous tissue, first 20 square centimeters. There's a parenthetical note that says, for debridement of the skin, see these codes. Indented underneath the 11042 is an add-on code for each additional 20 square centimeters or part thereof. What that means is if a wound was debrided 25 square centimeters, 11042 would be assigned for the first 20 square centimeters, and the add-on code 11045 would be appended for the additional 5 square centimeters. Now let's talk about if a patient has a wound that's debrided down to subcutaneous tissue on their shoulder that is 20 square centimeters, and they also have a wound on their knee that is debrided to subcutaneous tissue for 15 square centimeters, you will add those together because they are both debrided to the subcutaneous tissue. So you would append 11042 for the first 20 square centimeters and the 11045 for the additional 15 square centimeters. On the other hand, if a wound debrided on your shoulder was debrided to the bone for 15 square centimeters and there was a wound debrided down to subcutaneous tissue for 15 square centimeters on your knee, you would append 11042 for the knee since it went down to subcutaneous tissue and was not more than 20 square centimeters. Then you would append 11044 for your shoulder since it went down to bone and was not more than 20 square centimeters. Now it's your time to try with scenario 1. A patient has a wound on the shoulder that is 10 by 3. It is being debrided down to subcutaneous tissue. Pause this video and get your code. This scenario did not give you the square centimeters. Instead, it gave you the length and width. You must times those together to get your square centimeters. When you times those together, you get 30. So you will code 11042 for the first 20 and 11045 for the additional 10. Scenario 2 is a patient has a wound on the shoulder that is 10 square centimeters. It is being debrided down to subcutaneous tissue. And another wound on the patient's thigh that is 2 square centimeters. It is being debrided down to subcutaneous tissue. What is your code? Pause this video and get your code. Because both wounds were debrided down to subcutaneous tissue, you will add the square centimeters together. That will make 12 square centimeters. Your code will be 11042 because it did not add up to more than 20 square centimeters. The last scenario is a patient has a wound on the shoulder that is 10 square centimeters. It is being debrided down to subcutaneous tissue. They have another wound on their thigh that is 2 square centimeters. It is being debrided down to bone. Pause this video and get your codes. There are two biopsy codes, 11100 and 11101. The use of a biopsy procedure code specifies that procedures to obtain tissue for pathologic examination was performed independently or was unrelated from the other procedure or service provided at that time. Otherwise, it's a separate procedure and can't be coded with another procedure on the same date. The intent of a biopsy is to remove a portion of the skin, suspect lesion, or entire lesion so that it can be examined pathologically. The intent of an excision procedure is to remove the entire lesion along with a margin of normal tissue around it. Now let's talk about the different types of lesion removals. A lesion can be removed by destruction. You will need to look for laser surgery, electrosurgery, cryosurgery, chemosurgery, or surgical curement. Excision is with a sharp instrument and an incision is made, shaving a sharp object that shaves off the lesion. Skin tags are not the same thing as a skin lesion and are coded with the skin tag removal codes. Excision of lesions is one of the areas that you will definitely get tested on. Follow these steps when coding a lesion excision. To determine the code, you will need to know, was it benign or was it malignant? What location of the body was it excised from? And what was the size of the lesion? This is a diagram that we came up with to show you how to determine what lesion excision code to use. First, you will need to make sure that it was excised. Then, was it benign or was it malignant? Then, you will need to determine what area of the body the excision was done on. After that, you will need to get the excised diameter. We'll talk about that more in depth here in a second. Lastly, you will need to determine the type of closure that was performed. We will go more in depth in wound closures later, but if it was intermediate or complex, you can code those separately. If it was simple, you can't code that separately. It's included in the lesion excision code. The lesion excision codes are grouped into specific anatomical sites. The trunk, arms, and legs are grouped with 11400 through 11406 for benign lesions. Scalp, neck, hands, feet, and genitalia are coded with 11420 through 11426. The face, ears, eyelids, nose, lips, and mucous membrane are coded with 11440 through 11446. Go through your book and highlight these anatomical regions. It will be helpful for you to be able to identify them quickly. Now that you know how to determine the anatomical area for each code, you need to be able to measure a lesion and get the correct measurement. Look at this illustration. The orange part in the middle is the actual lesion. Every lesion has a margin, and a margin is healthy tissue that is excised from around the lesion. You will add the margin size to the actual lesion size. There are always two margins. That's important to remember. So your formula for getting a total lesion size is the margin plus the margin plus the lesion size. Look at the formula on this page and write that in your book on all pages that lesion excisions are on. The actual guideline in the CPT book says code selection is determined by measuring the greatest clinical diameter of the apparent lesion plus that margin required for complete excision. The margin is further defined as the narrowest margin required to adequately excise the lesion. There are always two margins. If a question states 3 centimeter lesion was excised with 2 centimeter margins, you would get the total lesion size by adding the margins together and the lesion. So in this example, it would be 2 plus 2, because there are 2 centimeter margins and there's always two margins. So 2 plus 2 plus the lesion size, 3, and that would give you a total lesion size of 7. The debridements that we talked about earlier, you can add together if they are debris down to the same depth. With lesion excisions, you can never add them together. Even if there are 2 lesions on your arm, you cannot add them together. They must be coded separately. I suggest writing this at the top of the page on each of the lesion excision pages, because it can get confusing for some students when you can add together the debridements and you can't the lesion excisions. Also, go ahead and add a note to these pages that you can't code a simple closure separately after a lesion excision. You, however, can code an intermediate or complex repair separately. We will go into repairs more here in a second. Let's do this first scenario together. Scenario 1 is, for example, if the lesion measures 1 centimeter at the greatest and the surgeon removes a margin of 0.5 centimeters, what's the total diameter excised? We're going to add together the margins. There's always 2, so 0.5 plus 0.5 equals 1. Then we're going to add the lesion diameter to that. So that's 1 centimeter. Our total diameter will be 2 centimeters. Now it's your turn to try. Scenario 1. Benign lesion was excised from the neck that was 2 centimeters with a 0.2 margin. And another benign lesion on the hand was excised that was 3 centimeters with a 0.1 margin. Take some time now, pause this video, and get your CPT codes. To get to your codes, you should have first went to the benign section of the lesion excision page. Then you should have looked for first the code range with the neck involved. After that, you would have added up your size of 2 centimeters plus 0.2 margin, which you would have gotten 2.4. Your first CPT code for the neck would have been 11423. Then, to get the hand excision, you would have went to the section with the hand and then added 3 centimeter lesion with a 0.1 margin, so that would have been 3.2. You would have gotten code 11424. Scenario number 2. Basal cell carcinoma was excised off the neck that was 3 centimeters with a 0.2 margin, and another benign lesion on the leg was excised 3.0 centimeters with a 0.1 margin. Pause this video and get your answer. You should have got 11624 for the malignant lesion. Because it was basal cell carcinoma, that is a malignant lesion. If you did not know this, write this in your book. 11624 you would have got by going to the table of contents at the beginning of the section, then going to the skin, and then looking for excision, and then malignant. Once you get to that page, you should have looked for the code with the neck in it. Then you would have added up your lesion, which came out to 3.4, and found your code of 11624. For the leg, you would have went to the table of contents, skin, excision, benign, found the leg category once you got to that page, added up the lesion size, which was 3.2, and gotten code 11404. Let's talk about coding procedures of the nails. First, we're going to look at the anatomy of the nail. In your book, you should have a diagram of the nail. As you can see, there's a nail groove, there's a proximal nail fold, the nail matrix, the nail plate, the lateral nail fold, and those are the main parts that you need to know. Let's look at the codes. There's a debridement of nails, so even if it was multiple nails, it can only be coded once because it has that S in parentheses, by any method, 1 to 5 digits. 11721 would be coded if it was 6 or more. Commonly, people get ingrown toenails, and they need to do an avulsion of the nail plate. 11730 is avulsion of nail plate, partial or complete, simple, single. There's an add-on code underneath it for each additional nail plate. An evacuation of a hematoma on the nail is 11740. A hematoma is like a bruise. It's a collection of blood. A common procedure done is 11750, excision of nail, and nail matrix. Nail matrix is the key term you should look for in the scenario. 11755 is a biopsy of a nail unit. Repair of a nail bed is 11760. When they reconstruct the nail bed with a graft, it is 11762. And a wedge excision of the nail fold is 11765. The key term here is wedge. Let's look at the pilonidal cyst section. A pilonidal cyst is a sac under the skin at the base of the spine. It can become infected. The physician uses a scalpel to excise the adjacent tissue. Code selection is based on whether the excision of the cyst is simple, extensive, or complicated. A simple excision, 11770, is closed in only one layer. That's why it's called simple. Write that next to the code. If several layers of closure are required and the documentation indicates extensive or complicated, turn to 11771, extensive, or 11772, complicated. Now let's talk about another very common section that you're sure to be tested on, repair and wound closure. Wound closure is a repair, so if they are closing a wound, know that you are coding from the repair section. This section is used for wound closure. Wound closure is performed by using sutures, staples, or tissue adhesives. These codes are coded by body area and type, simple, intermediate, or complex. Let's talk about simple, intermediate, and complex and what those mean. Codes 12001 through 12021 are used when the wound only involves the epidermis, so that outer layer of skin, or dermis. The wound does not extend into the deeper subcutaneous tissues. The repair is a simple one-layer repair, so they're only repairing one layer of the skin. Intermediate wound repair includes a layered closure, so more than one layer, or a single layer closure of a heavily contaminated wound requiring extensive removal of matter. That is something you want to remember because it's a guideline that could trick you. Make sure to highlight that in your guidelines or write that at the top of the page. A complex repair may involve scar revision or extensive undermining. These codes also include the layered repair of lacerations that require debridement of the wound edges before the wound can be closed. Repair coding. CPT instructions for wound repair. Wounds must be measured and are recorded in centimeters. When multiple wounds are repaired, you can add together the lengths of those in the same classification. So they must be both simple, both intermediate, or both complex, and from all anatomical sites grouped together into the same code descriptor. Do not add lengths of repairs from different groupings or anatomic sites. Let's look at a scenario to put that all together. A patient presents with a suspicious lesion of the left arm. With the patient's permission, the physician marked the area for excision. The margins and lesions measured a total of 0.9 centimeters. The wound, measuring 1.2 centimeters, was closed in layers. To code this procedure, you would have went to the beginning of the section and the index, and you would have looked for repair. It would have directed you to this page. The scenario stated that it was a layered closure, so that is an intermediate. So we need to go to the intermediate section. At the intermediate section, we're going to look for the body area that was repaired. And 12031 is for the scalp, axilla, trunk, and extremities. Your extremities are your arms and your leg. Now that we've got our body area, we're going to look for the total centimeters. This question tried to trick you. They gave you the total centimeter for the lesion, and they also gave you the total centimeters of the area repaired. We are going to code off of the total centimeters of the area repaired. It was less than 2.5 centimeters. So our code is 12031.